So we're going to get into the marker work here. I'm using a warm gray 30 Prismacolor. I like the Copic as well. I don't have the number 2 right now, so Prisma 30% a little bit lighter than the Copic 30%. Normally I try to do it a little bit lighter, but just for the purposes of the video being able to see what I'm doing at this stage, I'm going to do a little bit darker here. When putting the marker down, you want to use a pretty broad stroke, so that'll give you the flexibility of moving your line when you put down the ballpoint. So you don't want to be too tight with this, because it allows you to kind of see some different options when you have a little bit looser undersketch. I'm just going to kind of box things in to start with. Kind of a side view going on here. Not a whole lot of convergence in this one. And this is kind of a Blade Runner Bentley kind of thing. So Tyrrell, the head of the Tyrrell Corporation, he's got a lot of enemies. So this is an armored car, but it also is a very rich man. So it's the ultimate opulence of the time. So it's a retro styled Bentley with armored protection and maybe a little bit of firepower. So the masses that I'm putting in right now, I may not know the exact functionality. I'm thinking about it as I go along. But I'm just looking kind of aesthetic balance of the masses that I'm putting in here. You know, what's the feeling of it, proportion. You know, I'm trying to avoid evenness. Like if we're drawing a car, we don't want the greenhouse to be dead center. Very boring. We want to have some attitude to it. So does it cab forward, cab rearward? Is there some rake to it? You know, some angle, so it's got some forward direction. Or maybe it's kind of like a French style, kind of backward angle, so the car goes this way, but it's kind of got a laid back feeling, like a motorboat, classic motorboat. So this has a little bit of that retro kind of laid back quality to it, but also it has a little bit of modern product-y parallel feeling as well. Has these functional kind of pods like a spinner has to keep this thing hovering. So there's the functional elements. We usually condense most of the detail around areas of functionality. So the engine bay area, there's a lot of mechanical stuff happening in this area. Propulsion, combustion, the thrust of the engines underneath. Back here in the cabin, it's really just a pod for the driver to sit in, so not a lot of mechanical things happening. So this area is a little bit cleaner, simpler. So we have like latches and maybe filler caps and that kind of thing. So this can probably be some sort of focal point in this area, a little bit more detail. Back here, the rear spinner lift thrusters, quite a bit of functionality happening in here, but it's secondary to the front. So we will have some detail back here. Some veins, turning veins back there, just to add a little bit of length to the back. So we have this kind of bounding box and then kind of a fat marker stroke to kind of define that perimeter of the car. And then we can get into doing the ballpoint. And as I said, this is a cheap Papermate. Gives you a lot of variety to your stroke. So if I lay down kind of a light touch the paper, it'll be pretty light. Also at an angle, gives you a pretty light stroke, almost like a pencil stroke. And then straight down with a lot more pressure, you can get a really kind of clear bold line. So when we start to do the ballpoint on this, don't attack it first with a super heavy line. Come at it like you're still sketching. So this is the transition of the marker into the ballpoint, and we're just going to be applying the ballpoint lightly as we kind of figure out and make some more clear finished detail out of this. So we're just starting to discern the detail out of this, and it's really kind of a sculpting phase. We're sculpting with shape and also detail. We have mass in there. We have some suggestion of like the fullness of the surface, but as we apply lines to this, we'll be able to tell, is this a really flat surface on the side? Has it got some roundness to it? Things like that. So I'm going to start my line work in the focal point area, which is the front. I generally do that just because that's where I want to spend my time, do things really clear and precise in that area, and then kind of do the area away from that a little bit faster, a little bit lighter, and less detail. I think generally the tendency is that I slow down sometimes, but I should say, no, I speed up towards the end of a drawing. So that's why I like to do the detail areas first. This is like the radiator area. And this is going to be like a chrome surround on here. So maybe some suggestion of a horizon reflection as that wraps over. I'll double up lines quite a bit. So instead of just a single line going around something, I'll have a double line. So like in the head, this headlight here, maybe a secondary line in there, and that suggests some thickness to the bezel, some thickness to the material, maybe two materials coming to each other and there's a seam or a gap in there. And we have little accidental things that happen when we do like a rough marker, like we have a little bit of a feathering where this marker kind of hangs over. And it just seemed like a nice detail to kind of pull out. Like it's an accident, but I'm going to make it intentional. A little kind of a depth light or just a little fender corner light on there. We use little section lines to kind of show the shape. So these may be panel gaps, or they may be maybe part lines, but use them to your advantage to kind of show what the shape of that surface is. Because we're not doing any shading at this point. So without some sort of section on that big clean surface, there's no way to tell really what that surface is. I generally try to keep a certain motif form language within the same vehicle to make things seem cohesive, like it came from the same factory. So there's these kind of tombstone-y shaped headlights that I've started here, and I'm suggesting these are probably some sort of a weapon of some sort, maybe a sensor as well up here, but it's kind of got the same section going on as this, so it seems to relate. So that's kind of the logic that's happening there. So if you use a lot of like kind of stealth fighter triangular kind of breakup, then the details should sort of support that. The exception is if you're doing like a kind of a Mad Max type of vehicle where it looks like the vehicle's been scavenged from a bunch of other vehicles, then you can make things a little bit less cohesive, kind of a discord to the aesthetic of all the little pieces that go in there. Again, this is our focal point, so I'm spending a lot of time with the detail in this area, but towards the back it will get quite a bit simpler. Doing concept design, it's a little bit different than like industrial design, where we're actually designing something that's sold to a customer as a product. This is just kind of science fiction story. It has to look believable enough to exist in whatever universe we're in. So some universes are more realistic than others. So you have like 2001: A Space Odyssey, which is very, very science kind of fact based. There's no sound in the space. There's a lot of kind of research with NASA and scientists of what vehicles needed for an expedition to Jupiter might look like. And then you have like video game kind of world, which for the most part is pretty relaxed in terms of reality. Call of Duty franchise is pretty interesting because they start as pretty realistic and they've gone into pretty sci-fi, so you can see how that transition's taken place. So they start with like World War II, very historically accurate kind of universe, and then gone on to something really fanciful. So the point is, you don't need to get hung up on how this thing really works, especially kind of at your early student learning phase of things. The more you learn about different types of vehicles we have in our universe and in the past now, you can kind of apply that logic to future vehicles. And so a lot of these details may reference something I've seen on a real vehicle, a car or a jet or a boat or a passenger airline, helicopter, that kind of thing. And having some sort of real world reference also helps the the user of the video game or the viewer of the movie that's this thing is going to exist in. It allows them some sort of hold on reality, some familiarity that helps with believability. If it's too like new and unfamiliar, they won't understand it. I mean, they have to understand like which way it goes, for instance. I mean, it's obviously pretty car-like. And if they know kind of old cars, they'll get the reference of the longish hood, like a Duesenberg or a Bentley or something, and the radiator in front, and the pontoons representing where wheels would be. So before I run out of film here, I just want to say the next step you would get into is starting to thicken up your line weights. And the logic behind that is going to be to have your lines grounding the vehicle, even this thing is flying in the air, just underneath. You can give it some weight. So downward facing surfaces in general, same kind of thing. Surfaces that have some depth to the next surface, you can make those a little bit heavier. So the top of this pontoon here can have a pretty well defined line to show that it's some distance away from the body. As I go back towards here, these might be a little bit lighter just to show some atmospheric depth suggestion. This weapon-like thing here is pretty separate from the headlights, so that gets a little bit more thickness. The interior of the cabin, material separation, so this is glass to body, so I have a pretty heavy line here. Maybe just some quick indication of some interior as well. A little hunched over driver in there maybe. Functional detail, door handle, maybe just touch there with your thumbprint and it pops open. And then we're going to move on to the rest of this and finish it up pretty quick. But that's kind of the whole process here, and we have a pile of sketches to do this, and basically if you do all your marker work first, you kind of get in that mode of thinking, and you can kind of assembly line it out, do a bunch like this, and then move on to all your ballpoint tightening work as another separate step. This is a little bit more meticulous, needs a little bit more relaxed setting a little bit. You don't want to drink too much caffeine before you do this and be all amped up because your lines will be all shaky. So this is the fast, rapid, caffeine-fueled stage of things. This might be the later night kind of relaxed mode part of the process. But with this method, you should be able to crank out, a few pages of designs a day quite easily at a relaxed pace, and give your client a whole bunch of different ideas from which to choose from.